To be abundantly clear about this, because of the SJW DEI infestation, sexual harassment has such a very wide scope right now. But what we're about to talk about, not so wide. In fact, this is a very, I would say, on the nose case of what workplace and workplace sexual harassment really is. And leave it to Ubisoft to really define that whole problem. So, as Smash JT has it right here, Ubisoft lawsuit exposes years of sexual harassment. Oh, the irony. And you see, it got so intense that even The Verge had to go out there and recognize what was going on. Like, check this out. All the way back from October 2023, way back then, former Ubisoft executives arrested after sexual harassment investigation. Among the 5 people arrested was Sergey Hascoët, Tommy Francois, I believe that's how you say that, Tommy Francois, were at the center of several allegations of sexual harassment at Ubisoft back in 2020. It's taken this long to get to court. It's going to take even longer now. What did these guys get up to, you ask? Well, among sexual harassment, they also got up to toxic management and, you know, racism, I guess. I think this place is kind of blowing that part out of proportion in the court case as well. This is more of that protectionism stuff. Should your boss be doing this to you because your religion? No, but I'm not so sure that quantifies as racism. I think that's more just uh, discrimination. I think that kind of maybe I don't know. Again, it's not racism because Islam's not a race, right? So we'll get into that though. Again, like we brought up in the beginning, in the thumbnail and tails, an employee was tied up, and this had to do with Thomas Francois, if you will. And for clarity purposes, Francois, I believe, was the director of, I believe he was the creative director with the company at the time of his firing. I just want to make sure that we get that completely clear. So I'll just hunt down that screenshot and bring that up right here on who this guy was to the company. So let's jump right over and take a look. All right, Thomas Francois, former vice president of editorial and creative services. There it was. So as you can see, these specific allegations against these guys, we'll just get into that because it's right here on screen anyway. So you have Sergey Askaway here. He's the former chief creative officer, basically the guy. If it isn't one of the Gilmont family members, like Yves, I don't know how to say that name, coming through and saying like this has to be done. It was Sergey that was doing that. And so he was accused of sexual harassment, moral harassment by misusing authority and maintaining a toxic work culture. Uh, Thomas Francois, the guy we're about to talk about, he was the same as Askaway, plus sexual harassment, specific acts of showing porn and kissing without consent and tying up an employee. And then there was Guimont, Guimont, I believe that's how you say it. Guimont. I think that's how you say it. Guimont? Yeah. Guimont Patro, who was accused of moral harassment, shouting and bullying and threatening colleagues. So while his stuff wasn't sexually charged, he was still way over the line as an employer should be, or at least a middle manager should be. So we'll get back to tying up an employee though, and this was Francois. All right. So this guy was in charge of creative services. And so somehow this came up. So his office habits were showing pornographic film with the sound on the loudspeaker. So I assume what this means is that rather than a loudspeaker, he just has his like phone or computer speakers maxed out to play all of that. Also, apparently, you're just on your way to a meeting, and this guy rounds the corner and says, "Pucker up," and he wants a kiss, and he plays some game called Cat and Dick. Leave it to the French, right, to come up with something like that. Commenting in public on the physical appearance of employees whom he called bitch, ugly, slut, or cod? French. Leave it to the French. So while this employee, though, while a female employee was wearing a skirt, Francois forces the young colleague to do a handstand in the open plan office. So rather than having cubicles that restrict view, uh, Francois orders this lady to do a handstand, showing everybody in the space just what she looks like with her skirt over her head. Now, this same employee was apparently tied to a chair and put in an elevator and sent to another floor as some type of hazing ritual. And then we find out that there was something to do with smearing this employee, and this may have a different, this translation may be off because this is from France. But we find out that he was smearing on, there was an employee who had her face smeared with a felt tip marker and was not able to wash her face off before attending a meeting, was forced to go through the meeting. So again, uh, this another employee was apparently held down during a Christmas party, and Francois attempted to kiss this employee. Now, it's suggested this is a female employee, as is his track record. But again, you have to deal with this kind of might have a mistranslation. You gotta love Google. You know, Google Translate's doing its best here. Again, we could switch back and forth and get a proper translation, but you know, who has time for that? But I want to get into this is the guy that's running around corners smooching on these Ubisoft workers, okay? This guy right here. This is the guy that's tying women to chairs and sending them up and down elevator shafts. This is the guy that is having employees do a handstand and showing off their underoos to the entire workplace. Okay, I don't know about you, but like he reminds me of like every '90s villain character from like those grunge skater movies and stuff like that. Like he kind of looks like the ratty guy from Demolition Man. You know, not the guy that Dennis Leary was trying to play, but like one of the guys that would be insubordinate of him. He just kind of looks like a tunnel rat kind of guy. He looks like kind of a rat guy. You expect him to have like a huge hunk of cheese in his hand, you know, like he's like one of those rat characters from the video games. But yeah, this is the fellow that did all that, by the way, okay? Not some hunky Frenchman, right? Not some pillar of masculinity. No, some dweeb with his hair dyed and a gap you can drive the USS Gerald Ford through. Look at that. I feel like when he smiles, you hear like the doot doot doot, like it's the hangar doors opening when he's talking. But we're going to move on now to Hascoët. And so this is Hascoët, and what went on with him is that we'll have to review this again because I forget. Sergei Hascoët was the former creative officer, right? So he was the guy, chief creative officer. He was the tippity top of this, okay? So imagine the guy that basically runs the company outside of the Gilmans doing this, okay? Now, some of you out there who, like me, come from 4chan may find this funny because, again, like, whatever, we have our own opinions. This isn't something we're going to do in a professional atmosphere, but we're going to go, whoa, that's funny because it didn't happen to me, right? Okay. Just want to clarify, if you see me smirking and laughing here, it's because I come from the 4chan era. I grew up on that. That was my first social media, so this stuff is hilarious to me, and I really don't. Yeah, maybe I do. Who knows? So the desire to humiliate. You have Hascoët here, 59 at the time, 60 years old. He's over 60 years old now, okay? Going to trial for this. This is Hascoët, 59 years old, is accused of lewd behavior and posing intrusive questions, sexual nature, as well as racist comments and whatnot, racist comments and behavior. Now, I don't think the sexual nature stuff is funny. I don't think the lewd behavior is funny. However, what we're about to find out about what he did with these people's computers is a little amusing. Following the deadly jihadist attacks, this was the Charlie Hebdo stuff back in 2015. Allegedly, Hascoët, Sergey went around and changed and asked Muslim employees if they agreed with the ideas of the Islamic State group. Now, given the context of this, okay, because they love the context, the lefties, the old lefties, they love their context. You and I both know they've got to have that context. It's the spice you have to put in your conversation so people understand what you mean. Because without context, who would know? So anyway, so you have these attacks where a newspaper company that puts out a picture of Muhammad is brutally attacked, and the people who did it are drug out into streets, and employees are murdered who had nothing to do with it. All this stuff, very brutally beheaded, that kind of stuff, out in the middle of the streets, very graphic stuff. So a person who works in that same country then starts asking their Muslim employees, hey, how do you feel about these people that just went out and did that? I don't know about you, but I feel like that might be something a boss might want to do, especially with a group of people who tend to get a little iffy about their prophet being depicted in any way, shape, or form. So I mean, you might want to, especially when you're making an Islamic game, by the way, right? Because we had Assassin's Creed Mirage come out. Remember that? That game had a bunch of yeah, basically takes place in the middle of Islam controlled Middle East. I think this is between the Crusades. I think is when that was set. I could be wrong. Let me know down in the comments if I'm wrong on when that was set. But I think this is pre English. This is still back in the ye olde days. I think that's when this was between the Crusades. Again, I could be wrong. It could be set in 1940. Who knows? I didn't get into it. I just saw the advertisements for it, and I was like, pass. But anyway, so here's what he did. Next, coming up here, this employee apparently had her computer desktop background changed to images of bacon sandwiches, and food was placed on her desk during the Islamic month of Ramadan. So to be clear, Hascoët apparently felt that any presence of Muslim in the office should be forced out. And so rather than trying to create something professional as a reason to fire this person, he decided to make this person very uncomfortable in their position. Now, like I said, I'm smirking because I come from the days when this is the kind of stuff you joke about. Like, wouldn't it be funny if they went around and changed all the background pictures to bacon sandwiches? And wouldn't it be funny if they screwed with them on Ramadan, and that kind of thing? But it's not really something a multi-million-dollar company should be concerning itself with. If they have problems with Muslim employees that are maybe not expressing the right politics around another information corporation having a series of beheadings carried out upon them, maybe the boss is okay to be like, hey, we need you to take some time off. Why don't you do some remote work, huh? How about we set you up with some remote work? It's all the craze. Let's just send you off to some remote work there and you can just be at home, okay? And again, like, there's a way around this instead of doing the meme thing. And again, like, this is all stuff that can be traced back to you rather than trying to express concern about this terrorist attack that you don't want repeated in your office. Now, what raises my suspicion is why Hascoët thought that this woman might carry out such a thing, and so he decided to squeeze her out of the company. That's what that kind of I don't know, it kind of surprises me, I guess. Maybe I kind of want to know what was going on there that he knew about her that was causing this kind of clash in the office. Not that she did anything to deserve to have her stuff changed over to this. She should have had a professional response to whatever he was having a problem with. And if it was the fact she was a Muslim, well, he does have a right to ask that question, especially considering that he's your boss and a bunch of people his fellow countrymen were just beheaded, you know. Again, I don't think it's smart, but I see the thought direction that he went down trying to answer this question without making it an Ubisoft problem, but whoops, in the end, it ended up being there. The third defendant, former game director Petro, 39, has been accused of psychological harassment. And so what things went on with him was the investigators have spoken to dozens of witnesses during the probe, but many refused to file a complaint for fear of reactions from the video game community. And so again, they're not talking about us. They're not talking about us because quite obviously, I mean, take a look. Like, come on. This guy is obviously touting the male feminist lines. He's obviously showing up and making sure that all the diversity and inclusion boxes are checked. Don't worry. Okay, look at that. That's obviously a guy that makes sure that gets done. So these are the kind of people they want to protect. And so when these employees don't want to come out and speak out against these guys, it's not because of you and me out here. They're going to go, hey, I see myself in that rat-faced weirdo. No, it's not because of that. It's because of the other developers in their industry that will react negatively, having, this kind of attitude being wrung out of the gaming corporation. Because this is how it works, obviously. You get these people in, you start manipulating them, and then you get what you want out of them. How many times have we heard it again? Like, you remember this last time we reported on it when we talked about this going on over in Indonesia, when there was a female business owner who was torturing a younger female subordinate, and it just kind of boiled down to some psycho thing where she was younger and prettier, and the older woman couldn't deal with it, so she decided to try destroying her. Now, Again, we had Ubisoft brought up again by The Verge, and I will keep going back to The Verge because this demonstrates how big this is. Like, these guys want to sweep this stuff under the rug, don't not talk about it, but this is how big it got. This is way back in 2020. This is a survey that reveals that 25% of employees have seen or experienced workplace misconduct, right? So again, now you might be thinking to yourself, like, how did this go on for so long? Well, that's the million-dollar question now, isn't it? Back in 2020, the scandal first broke when anonymous testimonies flooded social media and French outlets like Libération and Numérama, I believe that's how you say it, blew the lid off of reports of over 100 cases of harassment ranging from psychological abuse to sexual harassment. Half of these cases were known to human resources, but guess what? Nothing was done. Now, according to this report you're looking right here, 25% of Ubisoft's workforce had either witnessed or experienced workplace misconduct. To kind of break that down, that's 1 in 4 Ubisoft employees, and you know how many studios they own. You know how many subordinate studios they own. That's many thousands of people, okay? At least in the hundreds, if not, 3 or 4,000 people, maybe more at this time, okay? That's just back in 2020. Now they've learned how to keep it a secret. Now they've learned how to threaten people even more thoroughly, I assure you. In fact, it's probably gotten into some brouhaha where you have to go through all of this in order to be accepted into any type of power inside of Ubisoft. And so there you have it. Could you just break that down for a minute? That over the course of all of these employees, 25% of them had seen or experienced some kind of bad news, Jim, at work. That's pretty astonishing, and they blame it all on these 3 guys and said, "Okay, that problem's solved." So these 3 guys apparently were over so many thousands of people were carrying out the 25% of sexual harassment in the workplace. These 3 guys. That's what Ubisoft wants you to believe. Okay? It's like Smash JT said right here at the beginning of the whole thing. Oh, the irony of it. You got a company that preaches all kinds of DEI and feminist ideology, whole bunch of what we call over here leftist Democrat ideology, but in Europe, it's a totally different thing. You got all this kind of corporate conversation about gender and they, them, and pronouns. And then, of course, that boot camp to hell that we talked about last year, where Ubisoft is pulling people out of universities and training them with their DEI expectations, then giving them sponsors to get them into high up positions in other game companies. Okay? With all this happening in the background, this 25% of employees being sexually harassed or seeing it happen. Okay? That's pretty nuts. That's pretty crazy. Sexually harassed, verbally, psychologically, however you want to do it. Some bad news is happening at Ubisoft, and all this crazy stuff's happening in the background where they're pulling these kids out of college and training them with how things ought to work. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what is the point of fighting these allegations instead of just accepting, right, as Ubisoft should have done in the beginning, and just say, yeah, we really need to retrain everybody here. We're going to clean out all of our management staff and move up people who have demonstrated none of this attitude. Might have worked. But see, again, whoever gets fired is usually the lower end group. In fact, we have to remind you, right? We have to remind you, this fellow right here, Hascoët, he got to resign. He didn't get fired. He got to resign, and he's the ringleader of all of it. He's the guy that was in charge of the company that permitted Francois to go around. This guy was the one who was going around kissing people. And Hascoët, who isn't this fella, but his boss, was allowing him to go around and do that, knowing full well that this was happening. Meanwhile, Hascoët was busy putting pictures of bacon sandwiches on Muslim employees' computers. And they wonder why their games suck. They wonder why the games are missing the mark. And again, Assassin's Creed Shadows was still in production at this time. These guys aren't new to this. Assassin's Creed Shadows was happening at this time. It was in production. They were getting everything to go. They were working on the foundations of it. The story, I think the story was already settled at that time. So these guys were right there during all of that. Same crew. They just got rid of these guys because they were the ones who made headlines. I guarantee you this abuse goes even deeper. But We'll have to wait and find out as Ubisoft continues to disintegrate. And just, I believe now, 10 days before the release of Assassin's Creed Shadows on the 20th of March 2025, unless there's another delay. Uh, right now, just 10 days before that, all of this information surfaces. It's really got to suck to be the Ubisoft marketing team right now to deal with all this. I can't imagine what's going through their, their email boxes right now. But unlike you and me, we don't have to deal with that, right? However, there's a whole lot of other challenges out there. So until the next video, good luck out there.